Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, the films that shaped the MTV generation. Thus far, I've looked at two films that were written by Chris Columbus, 1984's Gremlins and 1985's Goonies. Today, I'm looking at Columbus's 1987 directorial debut, Adventures in Babysitting, which was written by David Simkins. We open in the Chicago suburbs, in the bedroom of a high school senior named Chris, who is lip-syncing to And Then He Kissed Me, the 1964 hit by the Crystals, while getting dressed for a big date at a fancy French restaurant with her boyfriend. Chris is played by Elisabeth Shue, whom we have already seen in The Karate Kid. Her boyfriend Mike pulls up in front of her home in his red Camaro with the vanity license plate that spells out "So Cool," which in 1987 I probably would have actually thought was, yes, so cool. Mike is played by Bradley Whitford, future star of The West Wing. Mike breaks the news that he needs to cancel their big date because he has to stay home and take care of his sick little sister. Chris, who is a thoroughly nice person, is disappointed yet understanding. A neighboring family, the Andersons, asks Chris if she can come over and babysit while the parents attend a big reception in the city. With her plans scuttled, Chris figures she might as well. The Anderson kids are high school freshman Brad, who is hopelessly in love with Chris, and his kid sister Sarah, who, in a pretty good running gag that will eventually pay off beautifully, is obsessed with the mighty Thor. Brad is played by Keith Coogan, who starred in a pretty good run of teen films in the late 80s and early 90s, including Hiding Out, Toy Soldiers, and the film most likely to be confused with Adventures in Babysitting, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Sarah is played by Maia Brewton, whom we saw briefly in Back to the Future. Shortly after arriving at the Anderson home, Chris gets an emergency call from her best friend Brenda, who is calling from the payphone at the bus station in downtown Chicago. Brenda is played by Penelope Ann Miller, known for films like Carlito's Way and The Freshman. Brenda is trying to run away from home, but she spent all of her money on cab fare from the suburbs. She's terrified about being alone at the bus station at night, and she's starting to have a meltdown, so Chris agrees to drive into the city and pick her up. Brad and Sarah bulldoze her into letting them come along, and Brad's perpetually horny best friend Daryl joins the party as well. Daryl is played by Anthony Rapp, known for starring in the original Broadway production of Rent, and who is currently starring in the Paramount Plus series Star Trek Discovery. His name has been in the news lately for his ongoing lawsuit against Kevin Spacey for assault and battery, for Spacey's alleged inappropriate sexual advances against him at a party when Rapp was 14. At the wheel of her mom's station wagon, Chris drives Sarah, Brad, and Daryl into the city to pick up Brenda. The car blows a tire on the expressway, and Chris has no spare. A tow truck pulls up, and the driver, who is the first of many good Samaritans Chris will encounter over the course of the evening, offers to help them out. The driver is named Handsome John Pruitt, and he's played by John Ford Noonan. Chris has no money, but Pruitt offers to tow them to a garage and buy them a new tire. En route to the garage, though, Pruitt receives an urgent message over the CB radio telling him his wife is currently in bed with another man. Pruitt reverses course and takes off for his home, where he tries to shoot his wife's lover. While his wife wrestles with him for the gun goes off and a bullet shatters the windshield of Chris's mom's car. Chris and the kids take refuge in the wife's lover's Cadillac, but the car is in the process of being stolen by a young car thief named Joe Gipp, played by Calvin Levels, who takes off with Chris and the kids in the car. Joe, who is a nice guy, refuses to drop them off in a bad neighborhood at night. He makes the sketchy decision to take them with him to a chop shop, where his boss, Graydon, played by Ron Canada, is horrified that Joe has exposed their illegal operations to a group of outsiders. Graydon's scary boss, Bleak, played by John Davis Chandler, locks the kids in an upstairs office. In the office, Daryl swipes an issue of Playboy, which, in a running gag, features a centerfold model who bears a surprising though coincidental resemblance to Chris. Realizing Bleak and Graydon are likely to have them killed, Chris, Sarah, Brad, and Daryl sneak out of the chop shop via the rafters. Joe sees them escape, but keeps his mouth shut. It turns out the Playboy contains incriminating handwritten notes about stolen car sales. Graydon and Bleak discover the theft of the Playboy, and, along with Joe, head out after Chris and the kids to get it back. Chris and the kids duck into a blues club called the Silver Dollar Room and accidentally end up on stage while blues great Albert Collins is performing. Per club rules, Collins won't let them leave the stage until they sing the blues. Chris, backed up by the kids as well as by Collins and his band, improvises a song called The Babysitter's Blues and wins over the crowd, while Graydon and Bleak lurk in the audience waiting to kill them. This is the film's most famous scene, and it's genuinely very charming and funny. On the spectrum of great cinematic moments where the protagonists are forced to improvise a song on the spot to avoid grave personal danger, This moment comes in second only to that scene in Trainspotting 2 where Renton and Sick Boy improvise a fiery and impassioned anti-Catholic song after robbing the patrons blind at a Protestant pub in Scotland. At the triumphant conclusion of the song, Chris, Sarah, Brad, and Daryl swan off the stage to thunderous applause. Graydon and Bleak try to follow them, but Collins won't let them leave the club until they sing the blues. Chris and the kids make it to an L station where they hop the turnstile and board the train. Two warring street gangs board their car from opposing ends and whip out switchblades. I cannot possibly be the only Gen Xer who, upon seeing The Force Awakens for the first time, saw the moment where Chewbacca and Han Solo find themselves surrounded on either side by the Guavian Death Gang and by Kanji Club, and thought immediately of this scene from Adventures in Babysitting. Chris tries to talk the feuding gangs into letting them off the train. One of the gang leaders calls her a bitch, and when Brad comes to her defense, he ends up with a switchblade embedded in his foot. Chris yanks the blade out of his foot and, filled with righteous fury over her long and very stressful evening, intimidates the gang members into letting them exit in peace. They visit the hospital so Brad can get his foot stitched up, where they run into Pruitt, the tow truck driver, who tells them he towed Chris's mom's car to a nearby garage and bought her a replacement windshield, though Chris will need to pay for a replacement tire. They're close to the University of Chicago campus, so Chris and the kids dip into a frat party, where Southside Johnny is performing Expressway to Your Heart, so Sarah can use the bathroom. Daryl hooks up with a college girl played by Lolita Davidovich, who would star opposite Paul Newman in the 1989 film Blaze. Chris meets a cute frat boy named Dan, played by George Newbern, known for the Father of the Bride films. Chris and Dan flirt, and he takes up a collection at the party to pay for her new tire. Dan drops Chris and the kids off at the garage, where the bad-tempered owner, Dawson, refuses to let them pick up the car because they're $5 short. Because he has flowing blonde locks and is wielding a sledgehammer, Sarah assumes Dawson is the mighty Thor under an evil enchantment. She offers to give him her helmet to restore his powers, which melts his icy heart, and he agrees to give them the car. Dawson is played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who got his big break by starring in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, which came out in theaters 2 weeks before Adventures in Babysitting. Going immediately from Full Metal Jacket to Adventures in Babysitting is pretty much the definition of being a versatile performer. With the car repaired and back in her possession, Chris heads to the bus station to pick up Brenda, who has undergone various traumatic adventures of her own during the long evening. En route, Chris passes by a French restaurant and spots Mike's Camaro parked out front. Chris and the kids burst into the restaurant, where she finds Mike dining with another girl. Chris chews him out, then Brad steps in and chews him out as well, and then Daryl steps in and gives Mike a literal kick in the pants. In all the commotion, though, they lose track of Sarah, who gets distracted by the window display at a toy store. Graydon and Bleak, chauffeured by a reluctant Joe, spot her and chase after her. She runs to the downtown skyscraper where her dad works to find her parents, who are there for a fancy reception. Sarah gets off the elevator at the wrong floor, which is still under construction. Graydon is hot on her tail, so she lowers herself down on a rope dangling outside the building to escape him. This naturally leads to a moment where Sarah dangles outside the window at a fancy party while her parents fail to notice her. Graydon climbs down after her and gets stuck outside, while Chris, Daryl, and Brad pull Sarah to safety. They're stopped by Bleak, but Joe punches Bleak out and lets Chris and the kids go free. Chris and the kids drive to the bus station and finally pick up Brenda. They zoom home, one step ahead of Brad and Sarah's parents. With the Anderson parents blissfully unaware that anything out of the ordinary has happened that evening, Chris tucks the kids into bed and leaves, only to find Dan parked in the Anderson driveway. He asks her out on a date, while Brad, Daryl, and Sarah urge her to kiss him from the bedroom window. Over the end credits, we hear "And Then He Kissed Me" by the Crystals one more time as Chris and Dan kiss. As with so many other 80s teen films, including Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Weird Science, there was an attempt to turn Adventures in Babysitting into a sitcom. In 1989, a pilot starring Blossom's Joey Lawrence as Brad and Beverly Hills 90210's Brian Austin Green as Daryl was filmed, though the series was not picked up. A 2016 remake aired on the Disney Channel. By 1987, the year of this film's release, we were already deep enough into the golden age of teen films that we were starting to see certain repeating patterns. It's hard to watch Adventures in Babysitting without feeling a nagging sense of déjà vu because we've seen so many elements from it in so many other films. Adventures in Babysitting seems like the final film in a weird, sprawling trilogy that includes 1982's Risky Business and 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, both of which I've already looked at here. All three films are obviously very dissimilar in look and tone, but there's there's a lot of thematic overlap. They're coming-of-age films about sheltered teens from upper-middle-class suburbs who end up going on madcap adventures in downtown Chicago, which involve destroying their parents' cars, running afoul of vendetta-driven characters, and experiencing a series of near misses in which their antics almost get discovered by their clueless parents. As with Risky Business and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Adventures in Babysitting is a solidly entertaining film which is generally regarded with affection. It's not darkly cynical like Risky Business, nor is it a joyous burst of extravagant wish fulfillment like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Instead, it's a gently ridiculous and optimistic and pretty warm-hearted film. Some reviews at the time criticized it for making downtown Chicago look overly sinister and dangerous, but honestly, I think Chicago fares well. While Chicago at night seems scary from the perspective of sheltered suburban kids, the film also makes it seem glamorous and exciting as well. Despite spending the bulk of the film chased by murderous car thieves, Chris and the kids encounter a great many strangers who end up being firmly on their side, like Joe, Pruitt, Dawson, Dan, and the entire audience at that blues club. The script isn't anything special, and the big climax, with Sarah dangling outside the skyscraper, long outstays its welcome. But the film mostly works, largely because it's well cast. Elisabeth Shue, who took time out from studying at Harvard to do this film, was one of those go-to performers in the 80s who could be relied upon to turn in good work in everything she did. Chris radiates an unfussy, intelligent niceness, which helps put the audience firmly on her side during her long and harrowing evening. Apparently, a long list of actresses ranging from Molly Ringwald to Valerie Bertinelli to Sharon Stone were considered for this role, and maybe they would have been great, but the film benefited a lot from the casting of Shue. The younger performers, Keith Coogan and Anthony Rapp and Maia Brewton, are all solid. Calvin Levels, who would go on to star opposite Brad Pitt in 1991's Johnny Suede, gives a really cool, laid-back, charming performance as Joe, who spends the film seeming wildly entertained by everything Chris and the kids do. Adventures in Babysitting is toothless, but it's also pretty enjoyable. Next time, in a decision I will probably regret, I'm going to tackle 1984's big screen adaptation of Supergirl. Thank you very much. I will see you here then.